Welcome to the Hermit Slant podcast. That musical intro was made by my daughter Claire. I appreciate deeply that her arrhythmic sense of tunes matches so deeply my own, even though we don't actually talk about the music and how she's going to make it. I simply gave her a free license to make something that she thought would be interesting to play at the opening of the podcast. Speaking of the podcast, I really would like to thank everybody who supports the Patreon. It makes transcriptions possible. It makes the fact that I'm going to be acquiring some new recording hardware in the next month possible. And it also facilitates me continuing to prioritize this project because, as you might imagine, I have a lot on the go. It allows me to continue to prioritize what amounts to basically a whole workday of my month set aside for this project. If you have been enjoying this podcast and all 92 episodes before this one, if you think accessibility is important as I do, then you can support the transcription process as well as continue to support me in providing this podcast to the world. Jump on over to patreon.com/thehermitslamp. Every little bit helps. Welcome to another episode of the Hermit Lamp podcast. I am here with Chaweon to talk about magic and to talk about glamour and all sorts of interesting things. I've been following their work for a while, and a little while ago they were discussing how they were working Glamour to forward their podcast and some of the other stuff in their lives. And I thought, yes, this is a topic that I really have been looking for a chance to talk about. And this is the person that I'd love to talk about it with. So for those who don't know you yet, why don't you introduce yourself though, Chaweon?
Oh, well, thank you for having me on your show. So my name is Chaweon, and I am Korean American, and I started off in life as a hardcore atheist, skeptic, so I've only been doing magic for about 2.5, 3 years, but unknowingly I've been doing glamour magic all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2 years ago, I started to get more into magic, and then that was about the time I started my YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel started off first as like a mukbang, which is the Korean word for like people just eating a massive, obscene amount of food. But then it slowly evolved into me talking to other magic practitioners. I was extremely lucky that Jason Miller, he was an early supporter of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to the interview that I had with him, I was able to get other guests on. I've had Aidan Walker, who you've had on many times.
Sure.
Love his book. And throughout my journey, you can see on my YouTube channel, just with each person that I talk to, I'm learning as I'm interviewing them. I'm not at all a very experienced witch, but it's me talking to them, trying to get their expertise and using my glamour magic or me trying to use glamour magic on each video. Like my goal in my YouTube channel is every video I want to look like 1% cuter.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, the thing about glamour magic, especially when it's visual, is that you can tell when it works and you can tell when it doesn't work. The feedback is instant. It's obvious because it's visual. So that's kind of how I practice my magic, through something as quote unquote mundane as doing a YouTube channel.
I think that's great though. I think that, a long time ago, I used to work in advertising, and I realized that when I started wanting to freelance, that I needed to be way more charming than I actually had been, and so I set it as a thing to work on, and I did a little bit of magic around it for sure, and I did a lot of like, all right, every time I'm in public, where's my opportunity to be charming to somebody, and how do I pursue that, and just pushing that comfort zone all the time. And then after a while, it didn't take even as long as I thought, I just started to switch into this capacity to drop into different social situations and sort of find the right way to sort of be myself, but be within those spaces as well. So.
Oh, I think you're very charming.
Oh, thank you.
No, I think that's what a lot of people get wrong about glamour magic. They think that it's you faking a
Hmm.
persona. They think that, and I call that faux glamour, FAUX
Hmm.
glamour, because it's almost like a pretending, almost like you're on Instagram and you're pretending you're in Paris when you're not, and pretending you have a great life when your life isn't that great. That's
Yeah.
not glamour magic. That's faux glamour. And I consider that actually a type of black magic
Hmm.
that the advertising world, the marketing world tries to put on people to make them feel bad. But real glamour magic, you can tell when somebody has real glamour magic because in their presence, you feel warm, you feel accepted, you feel empowered just by being around them. And so that's how you know when you go onto an Instagram account and you feel like my life is shit after seeing their Instagram account, that's faux glamour. But when
Mm.
you go on somebody's Instagram account and you feel great after you see their pictures, even if they're super beautiful and they're living a super amazing life and you feel great about yourself, that's how you know they're doing real glamour magic.
Mm. How did you learn this stuff? Where did that? I mean, you talked about you've been doing it in one way your whole life, right? But where did the not necessarily the transition from atheist to witch, but the transition from uh, not being conscious of what you were doing as glamour magic to being conscious of it. How was that transition? How did that come about?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I think that all women and all people of color and people who are not on, like the either or
Mm-hmm.
spectrum, all their life they do have to practice some sort of glamour magic because they're trying to make themselves more palatable to the mainstream so that they can survive. So I
Mm-hmm.
think as a woman, as a person of color, as somebody who considers myself gender fluid, I always had to do glamour magic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when I became conscious of it was literally when I did my YouTube channel. And the feedback that I was getting, like when I was doing my YouTube channel, people were saying things to me that were very complimentary. And I realized that this wasn't like a natural talent that I had in terms of like, I'm not somebody who you can put in front of a camera and I like know, I'm not like this inborn actress. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have that going on. And yet I couldn't deny that when I looked at the video, I was just like, girl, either the sun is like hitting you right or something like that. I don't know what's going on, but there's something there. And so that's when I started to study the YouTube videos and I was just like, you know what? I think this is glamour magic. I wasn't sure, but I was like, I think that's what glamour magic is. And then I started to experiment, like, what happens if when I look in the camera, I bring this like energy up, and I don't know
Mm.
how else to describe it, but it's like, what happens if I bring this energy up to my eyes? And then when I looked at the video, I was just like, holy shit, I can see it. So I think it was literally like 2 years ago. I was like, oh, okay, I'm doing this.
Yeah, that piece about sort of the way in which you manage your presence around it. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's really profound.
Mm-hmm.
When you find that, when you can figure out where that is, then people are super receptive to that. I used to officiate weddings at one
Mm,
point,
yeah.
and it was one of the things that I always sort of did on the day of, right? Basically from the time I showed up and was hanging out with the couple before the wedding to like the actual ceremony, and I wouldn't usually stick around afterwards, but even afterwards for a little bit, just having that presence and sort of seeing everybody from that place and providing that energy to it. And on the
Yeah.
days where for whatever reasons, maybe I didn't vibe with the couple as well. Maybe I was just really tired, that was harder. You could see it, everybody could see it, right? And those were the ones where it felt more like a performance versus an actual connection and engagement.
Absolutely. And that's the reason why I consider glamour magic to be one of the most sophisticated types of magic, because you have to be so self aware. You have to do lots of shadow work. You have to be also kind of aware of yourself in the context of others. So you're working on so many different levels. You have to be authentic, but you also have to be, just aware of how you are with just society and the realistic aspects of okay, this is what society is like right now. How far can I push it to further my agenda without getting completely like killed?
Hmm.
Um, but I think also that the thing about glamour magic too is that it's very democratic and it's a meritocracy. So the thing is that I think a lot of people, a lot of women especially, they tell me, oh, I don't know how to do makeup. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. So I can't do glamour magic. And I'm like, no, that's not glamour magic at all, because glamour magic is something that you can develop. Anybody can develop. So again, it's like you don't have to be mainstream beautiful. All you really need to have is a willingness to be completely authentic. And
Hmm.
that is a type of bravery that I think most people don't have. So just the fact that you can even entertain just being yourself means that you're already 1 foot into glamour magic.
Yeah. Being open and being present with people,
Yeah,
like that is a profound thing. And that's a thing that isn't about what any of us look like,
exactly.
or any of those kinds of things. It's about that inner state and that kind of inner coherence that we might have, right? If we're able to show up in that way. And I think about the Uber drivers that I have. I live in a big city and I take a lot of Ubers, and some of those people are just so open and accessible, and that's
Yeah.
really charming. That pulls me in.
Mhm.
And then there's the other people, like my ride today, where they just sit and stare at the front window and drive, and the music's really like loud. So it's obvious they don't want to talk. That's a completely different thing. And in those situations, it's random whoever you get, but in life it's not, right? And so if you're more in that first category of people, then people are interested and drawn to that more, right?
Absolutely. And think about it. The Uber driver who is more accessible and open and makes you feel comfortable just in their vibe, they're more likely to get a bigger tip.
Hmm.
And that's just for everybody. Just any aspect of life where you want to be successful, instead of faking it, when you're just being you and you're just being brave and you're just loving like everything about this human experience, it's not even good luck. It's almost like because you're being you and you're bringing that out in other people, your glamour magic brings out the best in others. And it's just this domino effect.
Hmm.
So this is why, for me, this, faking faux glamour is so dangerous, because in today's world, that's what we see so much of. And
Hmm.
that's also something that I want to make sure that people realize that is not glamour magic whatsoever.
Yeah, for sure. And there are definitely people who cultivate that a lot too, right? I've run into them in various places at conferences and on the street and wherever. And you can see that what they're looking for, I mean, that ultimately it's all ego, right? It's just all of their ego trying to become the center of attention. It's got a sort of a narcissistic feel to it. There's not space in the connection for anybody else often. Those are the sides that I see as being problematic, kind of like you talked about earlier, right? Like, how do you feel after you spend time with them? Do you feel like, oh my god, I just hung out with a fancy person? Or do you feel like, wow, what a great and fulfilling connection I just had?
Exactly. And faux glamour is about hierarchy. It's this very, like, I don't know, like toxic. Even if it's a woman doing faux glamour, it's a toxically masculine way of like trying to make yourself higher than
Mhm.
another person, making things very binary, making things less fluid. And to
Sure.
me, glamour magic, it's the epitome of like what very empowered feminine magic is about. And when you think about what does feminine healthy energy feel like, it's fluid. There isn't hierarchy. There's this watery depth to it, and that's what we're going for. This sort of like wonderful, um, kind of like permeable sort of energy.
Hmm.
And in that energy, there is no room for I'm better than you. I know more people than you. I have more followers than you. There's no room for that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that being tied to toxic masculinity, being tied to sort of capitalism and all that kind of consumerist stuff, right? I think that all of those pieces can, because we've predominantly all grown up in those kinds of elements or around those elements, right? That's part of that going in and exercising, removing those things, basically being like, huh, that feels off. That feels like that makes me feel grabby or greedy or competitive or this or that or whatever. Looking at
Yes.
those feelings when they emerge, and and then sort of saying, okay, well, what is that about me, and where did I get that from, and how do I release that so I don't need to carry that with me into this process.
Totally. And I think that, people think that men can't do glamour magic, but, men can often benefit the most from this feminine, fluid, non-hierarchical type of magic that is
Hmm.
glamour magic.
Sure.
And when you're around a man who's doing glamour magic right, again, it's that same warm, wonderful feeling. It's not this like whose dick is bigger than whose.
Hmm.
So again, it's like the glamour magic that I do is very makeup centric, so it's very femme centric, but there's lots of different types of glamour magic. It's a very diverse, democratic thing.
Sure. Have you seen my mustache? Right? you know,
I love
literally like the
it.
amount of people who comment on it and engage with it and whatever. It's like, you know, it's funny. I've been going through all the stuff in my house and, getting rid of stuff and reorganizing and stuff over the last couple of months. And I just found this picture that I've been like looking for a little while, which is me at high school graduation,
Mm,
my 12-inch mohawk and my fish
awesome.
tie and my fabulous plaid jacket that I wish I still had, and
Ooh,
all this stuff. And this conversation today reminds me of the various ways in which that was glamour magic, right? Being like those
totally.
kind of expressions so clearly articulate and define directions for connection, right? And the people who would just come up to me and start talking about my hair or whatever back then, it both tended to draw predominantly great kinds of attention my way, contrary to what many people would think. And then occasionally it would steer the other people away, where people would just be like, don't look at him, don't look at him. I'd be like, kidding, whatever, right? Like, come on. But either way, it sort of sets an energy into the world, right? And it's the same, having a big handlebar mustache, right? People are like, especially kids, they love it, right? And I think that, yeah, I think that exactly. I think that if you're not certain about these kinds of things, look at what kids are drawn to, right? How do kids engage with you? Because with both of these things, kids are like, oh my God, I love your mustache. Or they're like, oh, I love your big spiky hair, blah, blah, blah. Like they don't have that bias, and they're such a great indicator of that glamour, And I'm sure that you get that too, where they're just like, wow, look at how great your hair is, or your eyes, or whatever, right?
I definitely have, especially like even little boys.
Yeah,
They like the sparkles that I have on my face. They
sure.
think that's fun. So what I found is that glamour magic, if we're talking about visual glamour magic, there's many different kinds. But visual glamour magic for me is when you're wearing your heart on your skin. So your
Hmm.
outer matches your inner. And to have that congruence between inner and outer, that's a skill. When you can go out into the world and the way that you present, it matches how you feel on the inside, that is something that most people in their life they feel like they can't do, they repress, whatever it is. So when
Hmm.
you're going out with your mohawk, with your handlebar mustache, you're being you, and that's like an aspect of you that matches how you feel on the inside. That's sort of like, maybe for the handlebar mustache, it's like that more playful, like stylish aspect of you that's like, showing on your skin. And so the way that people interact with you when you're being you, I would have to say there's probably lots of people who wish that they could have the handlebar mustache, but I don't know, they're worried about what other people might think, or who knows. And
Hmm.
so they're not able to just be themselves and be authentic. There's that block. So again, it's like glamour magic, it requires this amazing amount of self-awareness and bravery.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And I also think it requires, it seems to me that it requires a real centeredness in
Yes,
yourself, right? I
totally.
think about you know, like I was joking with somebody who was talking about clothing, and they're like, I'm sorry. We'll pause for 1 second while the phone rings here. Downside to being at the shop, there's no off button on the ringer. It's like,
I feel like you should put like a photo of your handlebar mustache, like
mhm.
on the show notes.
I'm
So
totally going to. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
totally.
Yeah.
Oh, just there should be like a GIF or a GIF of me just being like,
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I have a friend who does like photos, like professional portraits and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
they're just in India right now, but in maybe I think they're back next month. When they're back, I'm going to do a photo shoot and stuff, and just yeah, the whole like have it super waxed and yeah, definitely
Ooh,
do like a
girl.
couple of those bad guy kind of
Ooh, or
yeah.
that like Salvador Dali sort of like,
Exactly, exactly. All right, I'm gonna clap and we can get started again.
Sure.
Um, so I think there's also that temptation sometimes to look at what other people are into and what other people are doing, or to kind of get pulled off track by that. Somebody was asking me a little while ago, because I've been reorganizing my house, we were having conversations about the kinds of things I have, and they were asking me like about fancy attire, and I'm like, I own my kilt, and I think I have a suit that probably doesn't fit me anymore,
Mhm.
that I never want to wear again anyway, because my detour into that stuff was just so incongruous with me and how I am, right? I'm just that's
Yeah.
not my thing. And
Mhm.
yet because of uh the fashion industry, because of media, I think it's so tempting to kind of get drawn into those other areas, and and we may find something exciting there, but we may also kind of come at the other side and be like, that's really just not me, and I don't need to ever do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the thing about glamour magic too is that there is a danger also of maybe taking it too seriously. So for me, glamour magic is very playful because you're not taking the way that you look or the way that you sound. You're not taking the five senses so seriously. When people start to identify too much with whatever it is, their clothes or something, and they stop experimenting. I mean, I'm glad that you went through, your little suit phase. You had to go through it, see what it was
Hmm.
like. You had to try it. But think about all those people who haven't had the handlebar mustache. Maybe they would love it, but they
Hmm.
haven't tried it.
It's true.
Right, right. So, I mean, like looking at your mustache right now, I kind of wish that I could grow one as well because I
Uh-huh.
think that'd be super awesome. Just like when I'm thinking, just to be like, like kind of like playing with the ends of them, and have that
Definitely.
much good work.
Yeah.
So the thing is that people who are really opposed to glamour magic, even if it's authentic, they say that it's superficial. I say, so what? Why is it that people put so much emphasis, whether it's too much about the superficiality or too much against it? When you're too identified with the visuals and beauty, then you become a slave to it versus when you're distant from it. When
Hmm.
you're just like, this is just this thing, this is my meat suit, I'm gonna die, whatever, I don't give a shit.
Hmm.
Then it's just fun. Then you can be like, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try gender bending. I'm a dude, but I'm gonna wear heels just because I've never worn heels. And who knows, I might like it. Maybe I won't. Oh, I hate it. Okay, but I tried it. Whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think you know hopefully we're all going to live to be old and super wrinkly, and like yeah, it's people used to ask me stuff about my hair back when I had my mohawk and whatever, and uh, I remember like at some point in one of those conversations, like looking at my dad, whose hair was kind of thinning, and knowing that my grandparents on the other side, their hair was kind of thinning. I'm like, I just want to have fun with my hair while I still have it, because I might not
There
have
you
it someday,
go.
and it's
There
like,
you
it's
go.
like, what are we going to worry about? It doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Exactly. Like right now, like my tits are amazing. So
Right.
of course I'm going to just show them everywhere because my tits, when I'm 80 years old, like I'm gonna look back at all the pictures where my tits are hanging out and I'm just gonna be like, fuck yeah, I was
Yeah.
hot. So, but the thing is that I can say that and think that without feeling like, oh my God, I'm gonna die when I don't have these tits anymore. Because again, there's that distance. This is just, this is just your looks. It's just your body, whatever. Just have fun with it.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that there can be so much seriousness around magic,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, the,
like, you know,
yeah.
see your piece about Instagram altars, see, like all sorts of stuff, right? We'll
Yeah.
link to that one in the show notes for people if they want to go and read it. Um, but and I remember being like super serious about magic, at one point in my life, right? And it's like, this is such a serious topic. I must treat it with the most respect ever. And it's not that I don't respect it any less at this point, but it's also like life is really to be enjoyed and reveled in, right? We come
Yeah.
down here to have or this experience, from wherever we are on the other side, and to be in a body and to enjoy that and to experience it and to be playful and enjoy the different things that life has to offer. Maybe I'm just too much of a Sagittarius, but I'm just like, why do we not just enjoy all of these things? And why do we not let magic aid us in all of those things? you know
Exactly. And that's the wonderful thing about glamour magic. For those who are just like, well, it sounds very self centered and like you're not really caring about what society's doing. And I totally beg to differ
hmm
because what glamour magic does is it kind of positions you in a way that's palatable to the mainstream so that you can actually push the boundaries better than somebody who's coming at it from a way that society's just going to be like, whoa, too much, too soon, you
hmm
know? So it's kind of like, for example, we all know of artists who, we all say, oh, they were born 20 years too early, or they were just way ahead of their time,
hmm
versus somebody who went in at the right time. So the groundwork was already laid. Like society, it moved a little bit to, let's say, the left, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And that's what glamour magic is. It's putting yourself in the place so that you can push society just a little bit to the left because you're not threatening. And I think Westerners especially are just like, well, why should I pussyfoot? Why should I try to cater to, or why should I try to be anything but? There's this thing we have where there's honor in being confrontational and being like
hmm
badass bitch, like in your face, all that stuff. You can do that. Or you can do it with honey. It's your choice. And glamour magic is for those of us who would rather do it with honey.
hmm Yeah, I think that it's interesting how people from different backgrounds have different approaches to this kind of stuff, right? And I think there's a time and place for both, depending
Mm-hmm.
on what you're doing. But I think it's really, um, it's really interesting how depending on what you do with stuff will depend on where it goes. And I
Yeah.
think that there's a time to, you know, uh, you know, hold protests and stand in the street and yell about stuff, and that can be its own glamour as well, right?
Totally.
And there's time to be in a different space. And it's always like, as because I practice an Afro-Cuban religion, this is my
Mm-hmm.
background. And I mean, Santeria, the more common name for it, that stuff tends to freak people out a lot.
Hmm.
But whenever they have conversations with me about it, because I don't have any, in part because I don't have any internal conflict around it and any
Mm-hmm.
real concern about it, then they're like, oh, that actually sounds super reasonable. I'm like, I know. That's why I'm involved. It's super reasonable. It's not this, that, or the other projection that people have put on it. And those kinds of things really open people's eyes to a different way of looking at it, to a different way of experiencing it. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. There's all different types of glamour magic, and one of the most successful types of glamour magic that anyone can do is becoming accessible. I
hmm
call it kind of like the girl next door, boy next door sort of vibe. And that's when you have somebody who you can just see is pushing society in some way, whether in their lifestyle or their looks. And yet, when you approach them, they're so warm and accessible, and they take away that scary, ooh, too much, dude,
hmm
feel. And that sort of glamour magic is, again, after you leave talking to them, you feel warm and you feel great. The next time your friend says some shit about that sort of lifestyle, you're just like, well, but I met that dude and he was pretty cool.
hmm
So, but that's very difficult to do. And I think that to do it successfully, you yourself, you have to be so like into like your self-awareness and self-development. And that's hard work. So glamour
Yeah.
magic is definitely not for those who want like an easy way out, or like easy way to become like, I don't know, McMagic-y of all McMagic-y people.
Magic son.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, let's be honest. If you're looking for the easy way, don't go into magic. Go do something else. It's not as straightforward as that usually. I mean, for
Yeah.
simple things, yes, but for like sort of uh bigger life arc altering work and stuff like that, it's a lot of work and it requires work on many levels. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I have a different thing that I also wanted to talk to you about. So you
Yes.
basically said, fuck this, I'm going to Bali a while ago
Right.
and just left. And I'm super curious about um, how that happened. How did you get to making that decision? Tell us the tale.
Ooh, okay. So I'm Korean American. So I grew up all my life in America. I'm an American citizen, but about 3 years ago, I went to Korea, and that's my motherland.
Hmm.
Um, and that's actually when my magic came to be.
Mm.
So coincidence that I started to really get into my witchy stuff in, like my ancestral homeland. I don't know. But after a while, I was just like, you know what, Korea, I've extracted everything I need to get from Korea. And the last eclipse, when you're doing magic, it's good to look at astrological transits. So the last eclipse, like last year, like in July or something, my work situation, it was just, the rug was pulled out from under me, very typical eclipsey stuff. And, when that happened, it was kind of like, like in South Park Cartman, where it's like, fuck you guys, I'm going home. Like it was sort of
Hmm.
like that feel. And I was just like, yeah, um, bye. It was this idea that magic, it will help me through making this very impulsive, within 3 months after deciding, fuck y'all,
Yeah.
I'm going. I was in Bali, and I didn't know why I exactly chose Bali, but I was drawn to it. And once I got to Bali, Bali is hands down the most magical place I've ever been to. There's magic going on literally on the streets, like 24/7,
Mm.
especially in Ubud, which is the cultural center of Bali. So, how did I end up in Bali of all places, right? Um, how did I go from, skeptic in America to going to my ancestral homeland, becoming a witch, and then going to hands down the most magical place I've ever been to, maybe I'll ever go to, in Bali. And these things, these currents that magic has brought into my life and had steered me to, um, without a doubt, I attribute it 100%, well, like 80% to the magic that I was doing.
Hmm. And so what kind of, like, was this the glamour magic? Was this other magic? Like what kind of stuff were you up to at that point?
Well, definitely glamour magic. It's something that I
Mhm.
practice every single day.
Yeah.
But I was also working a lot with Hecate, um, and I was giving a lot of like just offerings to land spirit, just like the basic stuff that Aidan Walker talks about in Six
Hmm.
Ways. So I love his book, and I think that all newbie witches should read that book. And the practices that he lays out, they're not difficult to do, and they have wonderful effects on your daily life. And so it was
Hmm.
nothing even that huge, except for like the Sorcery of Hecate, Jason Miller's course that I've been taking, and the glamour magic that I do, and Aidan Walker's Six Ways.
Hmm. Yeah, Aiden's book is fantastic. I wish many years ago that had been the book I got first, instead of, I
Right.
mean, Magic in Theory and Practice, which is what I started with, which was great, but also like, yeah, perplexing and contradictory and yeah, so on.
I kind of skipped over a lot of the books that a lot of magic people
Hmm.
they started with, because again, I've only been doing this for like consciously for the past 2 years.
Sure.
So like it's only now, like I just interviewed Marco Visconti,
Hmm.
um, and he's like a Aleister Crowley expert. So it's only now that I'm just like, oh shit, oh yeah, Crowley, right?
Yeah, that dude.
That guy.
Yeah.
So like the way that I got into magic, it was just so, I don't know, like it's non-traditional, but again, it's like the magic that I was doing, I feel like anybody could have done it, and maybe they wouldn't have had the exact same results as me, but
Hmm.
definitely their life would have shifted, and like life would have pulled them in the way that they were supposed to be going.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that when we start doing magic, then the world starts reciprocating, right?
Oh,
And
totally.
and I mean, in your case and in many people's cases, maybe the ancestors start reciprocating, right? And
Oh,
like
totally.
pulling you in a different direction, and helping you find those places where you feel so something completely different, and that might be right around the corner from you, or it might be far, far away, right?
Absolutely. Like, so Korea is a very Neo-Confucian culture. So Confucius, for those of you who have never heard of him, he was this Chinese philosopher, and he was around when like China was going through a shit ton of wars, and he was just like, oh, chaos, this sucks. Hey, let's build like an ordered society. Let's build hierarchy, emperor on top, old people, dudes on top, and everybody just kind of like obeys in order. And then Koreans were like, love that system, and we're just going to take it even further. We're going to inject steroids into that system. It became Confucius. And so a lot of Neo-Confucianism, it has to deal with ancestor veneration. So it's like literally like in the DNA of like millions and millions of Koreans, like modern Koreans, like the
Hmm.
ancestor veneration in Korea is like, there's two major holidays in Korea. And on those days, the country shuts down. This is like a first world country, right? Like super modern. It shuts down, and people, millions of people, are setting out a table filled with like food for their ancestors, and worshiping ancestors. They may not understand why, but it's happening across Korea on 2 days specifically, millions of Koreans. And of course, Americans, we don't really do that.
Hmm.
And Christianity, when it came into Korea, tried to discourage that. But when I went back to Korea, and Koreans are very good at kind of meshing a lot of the old Confucian ways with Christianity.
Hmm.
Korean Americans a lot more hardcore with their Christianity, but that's a totally different story. But when I went to Korea and I was in the presence of the mountains, which are considered like ancestral, like holy places. By the way, North and South Korea, it's like split in half, and there's this mountain range that's considered like the spine of the dragon that's been cut in half because the country was cut in half. And even Kim Jong Un, Kim Jong Il, anyways, those guys, the North Korean dictators, like all their propaganda, it involves like them being on the mountains. Like mountains are a huge deal in
Mm.
Korean ancestral anything. So being in the land of the mountains and my ancestors, and just being part of this magical current, like without a doubt, like I think that ancestor veneration is probably one of the easiest ways to get into magic.
Mm. Yeah, I think so. In my tradition, everything starts there, right? Start
Yes.
working with your ancestors, sort out stuff with your ancestors. It's the place where you can gain the most ground the quickest. It's a place where people can do the most on their own, I think. And it's the place that if you don't sort out that business, then like you can work on your shadow all day long, but if you're doing a lot of magic and your ancestors and your relationship to the ancestors isn't resolved, that's basically just a big piece of ancestral shadow that can always come in and mess things up if you haven't fixed it.
Yeah, I totally forget where I read this, but it was about how what happened to your grandmother, like DNA, like wise, like whatever sort of life that she led, it's like in your DNA as well. It's something about up to certain generations.
Hmm.
So think about how many people in the world, maybe the majority of the world's population, they have so much trauma in their DNA because of, war and all
Yeah,
that. I mean, especially in places like Asia. I mean, the Korean War happened in my grandmother's generation,
sure.
and if you're in Southeast Asia, we're talking Vietnam War that happened after the Korean War. We're talking about massacres that happened in Cambodia.
Yeah.
There's a lot of trauma that's in our DNA. And I didn't really believe in any of that, to be honest, as a skeptic.
Hmm.
But I remember there's this one doctor, I think his name is Dr. Bruce Lipton or something like that. And he's like a mainstream doctor, right? He's not, like this woo-woo guy. And he was talking about DNA and about the effects of basically ancestral trauma on DNA. And that's when I was just like, oh, a little bit more open-minded about it. So if
Hmm.
mainstream science is starting to sort of get into it more, I'm just like, oh, well, magic was way ahead of the
For
science curve.
sure. Yeah, and I think if we think about the past several generations, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't have to go back very far before there was probably difficulty, tragedy, poverty, war, the depression, like all those wars and conflicts of the last century.
Yeah.
Um, and then also just, more random things like violence, tragedy. We go back a few generations. What was the infant mortality rate? How many people watched their kids die? I mean, so many of those things um, were just the way of life, right? But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they didn't come with trauma and they weren't difficult. And it didn't mean that they're not still affecting us now. So for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that clearing out the ancestral trauma, I interviewed Liv Wheeler, who's a contemplative voice diviner, and this was an interview but first interview that I did in Bali, and it was such a neat coincidence that I was able to talk to her. And she works a lot with ancestral spirits, and she was talking about how she, and people who are sensitive, they can see how. Um, I don't want to say that they're ghosts, but like there's ancestral residue that
Mm,
can stick to people.
sure.
So clearing it is, like guys, like that's for everybody's benefit. Like it helps the ancestors
Hmm.
who are able to kind of like let go of their baggage. It helps you. So it's like a win-win for everybody when
For
you do
sure.
ancestral clearing.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even just paying attention to them, right? Like just
Yeah.
say some prayers for them, light a candle for them periodically.
Acknowledgement.
Like
Totally.
just that alone can make a huge, huge difference, right? It
Totally.
doesn't need to be, big shamanic this, that, or the other thing, or elaborate ceremony or whatever. Just be like, hey everybody, hey all you people that I came from, just saying these prayers for you. These are the prayers that I think you would like, because that's what you liked when you were alive, or whatever. And it's so helpful, right? It can move so many things and provide so many possibilities. Yeah.
Exactly. And for the skeptics out there, um, when you do these rituals, okay, even if you don't believe in any of the ancestral residues or anything like that, and you're just like, well, just doing it just makes you feel better, it's a placebo effect. So what?
Hmm.
It helps you, it brings peace to your life anyways. So I don't see any downsides to it. And that's how
For
I've
sure.
always operated. I'm still a skeptic in a lot of ways. So for me, it's like, what do I see in this mundane world that shows that it's working? And then
Mm.
I just go on that. And every time I've done magic, my life has become more authentic and it's moved in ways that feel better. So even if I'm a skeptic, I'm okay with it.
So how has your skepticism changed over time?
In a lot of ways, it's become more entrenched because now I'm just like, oh shit, I'm starting to really believe in this stuff. Can't do that, gotta stay like uber skeptical, especially now that I'm starting to be like, whoa, this was magic.
Hmm.
So there's that. And I think that's a very healthy way of moving through magic because, okay, one of the things that I learned in Bali, there was this amazing Balinese friend that I have. Well, not was, but he still is, Nano. And he was just a simple wood carver. And that's, he was just a master wood carver, him and his dad. And he was talking about how at the age of 40, a lot of Balinese people decide they're going to retreat from public life
Mm.
and they're going to just study. And in Bali, they do it's mainly a Hindu island, but they do kind of like their own tropical Hinduism.
Hmm.
Um, but he was saying how a lot of people, not a lot, but there's all these people who decide, I'm just going to read the books. I'm smart. I can learn what I need to learn, like from these books and stuff, and they don't get a teacher. And you can tell because these are people who become super ungrounded.
Mm.
And he was like, oh, you can tell that they didn't have a teacher because they're going to go out and they're going to like talk to trees, but like a crazy person. And, their life is going to go to shit. Versus when you have a teacher and you're grounded because you have somebody who can tell you, whoa, you're seeing visions, kind of ignore that. Maybe that's just your imagination. Oh, you're having visions and it came with this. Maybe there's something to it. It's having
Hmm.
somebody to help guide you. So it's almost like an outside skeptic.
Hmm.
That's very helpful. And that's when I realized the importance of having teachers, mentors, and like a community outside to kind of help steer you away from being way too ungrounded.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you know, as a as a godparent in my religion to people, you could definitely sort of say that one of my jobs is to be skeptical of some of that stuff for people, right? Be
Right.
like, oh yeah, that's great, you had a dream. Let's go actually ask the oracle that we use to speak with these spirits and see what they say. Like, let's, or whatever, right? And sometimes we find out something really profound when we notice things, and sometimes we find out that it didn't mean anything, right? I remember I was like doing this series of ceremonies, and like every day I was doing this series of ceremonies for a while, and at the same point in the ritual, which was also kind of like the peak of the invocation part,
Uh-huh.
um, this sound would start happening in my temple space, and I was like, what is that? What is going on? What's manifesting? Like whatever. And you know, and I go around and I'm like trying to figure out if it's something. Is it like the pipes or is it this or that? And nothing, right? Like no obvious um, reason why that sound is there. And so I went to my teacher and told him, and he's like, meh, I don't know. And I was like, oh, I wanted it to be something profound, but okay. And this went on for like, I forget how long I was doing this work, like maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks. And then right near the end, what I realized was that the oil lamp that I was using, when
Uh-huh.
it got hot enough, it
Uh-huh.
produced this sound, right? And it just happened to coincide with that moment in the ritual, right? So, it's just like those things, the phenomenon of things aren't necessarily worth getting caught up in. They're worth noticing,
Yes.
but they're also
Oh,
worth saying, well, if that's significant, I'll know that in time. But right now, I'm just going to notice it and carry on with what I'm doing.
right. I think there's this thing where I just get very okay because before the magic thing, I was one of those women who like saw other women get really into new age stuff.
Hmm.
And they're like so into like crystals and like whatever. And it was just kind of like it was very annoying. I call it like the Gwyneth Paltrow effect, right? And it was very like, have you seen this YouTube video called like shit new age girls say? It's like a parody.
I've seen a bunch of those videos. I don't know if I've seen that specific one, but yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
it's so spot on. And I remember thinking, oh girl, you are so ungrounded. I can't be around you, like everything is Pleiadian and alien spaceships are, right above you. And, like you're going to wear a purple skirt and shit because it's like bringing your energy somewhere. And I was just like, I can't deal.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, okay, super ungrounded energy. I don't like that. And so that's the reason why the more I get into magic, the more like stringent and hardcore my skeptic has to become because I'm just
Mm.
like, if it doesn't do that, then I'm afraid that, like instead of being in this world and doing magic in this world, I'm just going to be like off in La La Land doing magic in
Mm.
like some abstract fourth, fifth, 20th dimension
Sure. Or nowhere at all,
or
perhaps, right?
nowhere at all. And
Yeah.
that's no fun because we're like in this world, we're living in this world, like
Hmm.
let's have fun in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for taking time to hang out and chat with me today.
Oh, thank you.
And I understand you have a thing coming up, a course on some of this stuff that might be of interest to people who are listening.
Yeah, so I'm actually putting on my very first magic class, and it's going to be about surprise, surprise, glamour magic, and it's called Fierce. Like, oh, girl, you look fierce. And it's just basically a very accessible way of starting out in glamour magic. So, bringing in archetypes to start putting makeup on your face to invoke, evoke, and conjure up these archetypes. And so this is just for anybody who may not be 100% into magic, or maybe you are, but I see it more as like also a really great introduction into, you know, a little bit of astrological magic, but also it's a whole lot of magic in terms of like makeup magic.
Hmm.
So I mean, makeup is like a huge part of like my identity. I used to be a makeup artist when I was in college. So it's how to transform yourself using mundane tools. Instead of using like a wand, you're using a blush brush. Instead of drawing sigils on a piece of paper, you're drawing a crisp cat eye with an eyeliner brush,
Hmm.
with a liquid liner. Same thing. So it's taking magic with makeup and transforming yourself and doing it all with this like real glamour, not faux glamour.
Perfect. And where do people who want to come and bask in your glamour find you on the social media these days?
Oh, well, they can just Google witches wine. Usually my YouTube channel comes up like first thing. And on social media, you can just look me up. It's hichaweon, but I think it's mainly through my YouTube channel. All my social media stuff is there. Witches
Perfect.
and wine.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for making time to chat. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Andrew. So good to talk to you.
Thanks as always for listening. I was just chatting with someone who was trying to give the podcast a review in iTunes, and I just wanted to share how easy that is. While you're in the podcast app, you click on the library, which is where it shows you all the podcasts that you listen to or subscribe to, and you click on the Hermit's Lamp podcast, and then you just scroll to the bottom, and you'll see that there is the option to give us a star rating and to write a review. And then you just click the button that says send, and it shoots off to the interwebs, and it helps the Hermit's Lamp podcast be found for people who are searching this kind of thing, both online and in the podcast app. So if you've enjoyed it, do me the solid, go and do that right away. Thanks for your support as always, and I'll be back soon with another episode.